It is time for another episode of the Man Enough to Speak podcast. Today we've got a special guest. This guest is one of my dad's colleagues. My dad is a civil engineer and he's been in the field for far too long. 20, probably closer to 30 at this point. He's old. But yeah, he shared the podcast amongst his co-workers, and a couple of his co-workers reached out. One of his co-workers here that we'll have today is Vic. Now, Vic, I'm very keen to interview. With the past two podcasts, we've had someone my age with similar experiences to me. We've had my friend Harry, who's had different experiences and talked to us about managing them. And today with Vic, we've got a bit of an older viewpoint on it, especially from a time where there's still a stigma about men's mental health today, but I feel like Vic's got a very unique perspective. Back in the days, that makes him sound so old, but back in the times where it's manly not speaking, or being a man is like not speaking about your feelings and just bottling it all up. So I'm very keen for the interview today. We're going to have a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you check in on your loved ones. You guys are loved. And yeah, enjoy. Let's get into it. I'm so keen. So this is Vic, everybody. How are you, Vic? I'm so glad to have you on the podcast, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Thank you very much for having us tonight, Josh. It's a privilege to be a part of this effort of yours. I think it's a great initiative, and I think a lot of men don't put enough energy into being vulnerable and sharing their story. And I think we need to give license to sharing our stories. No one's got it perfect or easy. Everyone's story is different, but I think it's so important that we can do that for each other, and I commend you on that effort.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so on that note, look, I was born in Brazil. My family very Catholic, so I guess that was sort of my introduction to the world, and my it really flavored my view on the world and life. I guess I was extremely influenced by my grandparents and obviously my parents and my aunties and uncles, but my grandparents in particular, they're all four of them were people of extremely strong senses of duty and conviction, extremely proud, not afraid to say their piece and not afraid to stand for what they believed in. All of them extremely hardworking. So I guess I had I always had this reference point of around moral conviction, and that's something that I've carried throughout my life, and I guess I saw that manifest in my parents too. My parents made the decision to move to Australia in the late '80s, and we got here in 1990, and it wasn't a time where you knew where you were going. I think they might have seen the odd photo of what Melbourne and what Sydney looked like, but in terms of having an idea of what they were getting in a plane, packing up the family to go and do, that would have been next to nothing. But they knew that the situation in Brazil wasn't great,
Mm.
and they needed to do something different, and so they did. So I kind of grew up with my dad saying things like, "There's just no room to fail." Like we've got to make this work. We're here. We're miles away. You know, we've got to make it work. There's no room. So that kind of messaging from an early age kind of sets a tone. And I guess first sort of few years in Australia, I think Mum probably struggled a fair bit because she struggled with the language and struggled to find a click in the local community. I think, funnily enough, it was probably the Italian community that brought her in first, and that was her starting point. And I guess for me, I started off going into a local Catholic school, um, and things were generally, there's a lot of effort put into helping us settle in. We're a bit of a novelty at first, because there weren't really very many Brazilian migrants in Australia at that time. You know, one of the things that in those sort of first few years that stood out was um, towards grade 3, grade 4, some of the older kids started to, push me around at the back of the ovals and that sort of nonsense. And Dane Swan, if Dane Swan's listening, thank you. You're an absolute gentleman. Um, he he would see it, didn't have to, didn't know me. He was in the year level above me, and he would intervene. So and he would stop it, make sure I was okay, and then see me off. And later on I would see him again through high school. But there was that kind of set a tone for things that would occur throughout my life. There might be a moment of hardship, but there was some kind of a silver lining somewhere, in terms of the situation. And sometimes it was as obvious as Dane coming in and going, "Hey, enough of that, move on." Other times it sort of required a bit more looking and introspection to see the situation for what it was. Um, Grades 5, 6, 7, there was challenges there when I changed schools. It was much more difficult to fit in. The bullying was a lot more pronounced. There was a situation where I was surrounded by 10, 11 kids or whatever it was, and you know, yeah, right outside the classroom, the teachers were less enthusiastic about intervening. There was those sorts of challenges. But again, on that theme of the silver lining, as soon as I got in the car, distraught and whatnot, Mum was like a flashbang into the principal's office. Principal gets on top of it. Year 7, there were similar sorts of things, but it kind of became more of a recurrent issue, and it sort of took more of a racial sort of flavour, particularly as I sort of started to get into the high school years. And what was funny about that was the Italians would go, "Oh, you're not Italian, because you're from the north of Italy," even though you know they're about as far removed from Italy as I was. It's just that my ancestors took a different boat and it said Latin America, and theirs came to Australia. So that was a curiosity. The Aussies would go, "Oh no, you're a Wog, you're not Aussie." And then in '98, on my first trip back to Brazil, we're walking through a market, and I think I saw some red bananas or something I've never seen before. And I stopped to talk to the owner of the market stall, and he goes, "Where are you from, Gringo?" And I was like, "Oh, I could literally see the hospital that I was born in." And he's like, "No, no, no, no. Seriously, where are you from?" He didn't accept it. He's like, I was like, "Oh, I'm from Australia." So like that was a kind of a defining moment in a weird kind of way, because at that moment I realized that it doesn't matter how people see me. What matters is how I see me.
Mm.
And so I like to share that, because that was one of my sort of defining moments, and particularly in terms of how I saw myself. But it wasn't until an English teacher in year 11 that I really learned to start to stand up for myself. And it was interesting because through that period, year 9, year 10, your body's changing. You know, the kids can be quite ruthless and quite difficult. And I had an English teacher. He was probably due to retire then, and he always said that he would teach until he dropped. But he was quite he played a significant role for me, Josh, in that he pulled me aside one day after the English class, and he'd been watching kids give me a hard time for years. And he did something that no other teacher did for me. He goes to me, "I see the boys giving you a hard time. Next time they do it, put them up against the wall, tell them to fuck off, and do it in my class, and I've got your back." Wow. You can imagine my heart rate's doing this the next time that they're carrying
Yeah,
on like pork chops. He gives me a look.
that's a big
Say,
push to do.
that's a big thing to do. So
Mm.
I get up, the trepidation through the roof. The usual leaders are doing their thing in the English class. I go up to him, boom, against the wall. I don't like it. Enough. Off. So the teacher, he sees it. He's as quick as a whip because the other boy starts to protest, and he goes, "Hey, in my day, you would have had it a lot worse. Enough." He said his piece. Get back to work. And that for me was probably the first time that I properly stood up for myself. Didn't need to be anything more than that, but it was something that I was always quite quite grateful for that moment because it took that to sort of help me find my voice, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very similar to something Harry said in the episode we recorded on Tuesday. He said one of his big things that he found through his battles and all that, like bullying is a tough thing. I was bullied in primary school and I would not recommend it. But Harry said that it just takes that one person to sort of put a bit of belief in you and to say that they've got your back to help push you to either make a change like you did there or just to help you in general.
it takes a phenomenal amount of courage, unless you've been on that pointy end of it and you've had someone give you that little bit of encouragement to cross that threshold. Until you cross that threshold, it kind of follows. And I think that for me, that to round out that bullying piece, it was probably in later in life, probably around the time that I was working, that I think I really finished, dealing with that whole bullying saga. You had a and I guess it's sort of another angle, but the lesson that I learned from that experience was that um, just because someone's in a position of authority doesn't mean that they're necessarily someone that's going to be acting ethically. And I guess although that period, the 9 months that I worked in that environment, that situation, and seeing all my peers, because it was indiscriminate. That was the other thing that was different in that case.
Mm.
Whereas when I was young, it was targeted. But in that environment, that person was nasty to everyone working in that project, in that environment. And so, um, yeah, that sort of rounded out some things there that I think I probably had an idealized sense of, because someone's in a position of authority, that then they're going to necessarily be acting to the fullest and most ethical, extents that they can. So,
So
but yeah, and anyway, we're gonna.
with those experiences then, because like bullying and that sort of thing can be massively detrimental to your mental health, like really kicks you in the guts. You're down in the gutter when that stuff happens. What do you think was your biggest blockade? Like you had that teacher in year 11 which massively helped you put a stop to it, or at least put an effort that sort of made you stand up for yourself in high school. When it came to that project, the 9 months that you were working there, what do you think was sort of inhibiting you or stopping you from going at it again? Because obviously it's a massive thing. Like you said, it takes a heap of courage to stand up and push yourself there. Did you end up doing anything on your end to stand up for yourself, or it was sort of just a really big struggle the whole time?
Well, I did, but what ended up happening was nothing that I could have, nothing that I expected. And what happened was, um, by that point, I was savvy enough to take note and keep records of what was happening. And when I eventually mustered the strength, the courage to go and talk to my line manager as opposed to my project manager, um, his response was in many ways a lot worse than anything that the bully was doing, because he
Oh,
turns to me and he goes, "Don't rock the boat."
nah, that's
Verbatim, the boat.
that's such a
So
unique.
that for me ended.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's such a unique like way of looking at things, like coming from the younger side of it. Like, if you had a manager or something, I mean, there's still shit managers. Like, there's always going to be a shit manager. That's life. But for the most part, it's just so weird that, like, in for me, when I've had like discussions and arguments with colleagues and stuff, going to the manager's always been like a sort of like that teacher going, "All right, you two sit down, work it out," versus going, "Oh no, just deal with it." Like, it's very strange, a very rubbish way of running it. In I don't know, it's just very weird to hear that
It,
sort of
it,
thing.
yeah, and that was, it was confronting, it was challenging, it was frustrating, and I think if that situation was to play out nowadays, it would be completely different. But I think it would be completely different, not necessarily just because of how I would approach it, but I think you've now got this entire structure, in the workplace that actively fights and says no to these sorts of behaviors. Whereas that wasn't a thing,
Mm,
at that point in time. And so a manager in that situation could credibly, you know, just turn around and go, just don't rock the boat, which
yeah,
which
but
is exactly what happened.
and how detrimental was that to your mental health, or were you able to sort of manage it on your end, but looking around at your colleagues, you're just seeing like, man, like no one is happy here. This is not good.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. I think on in my own way, one thing that always helped me focus my mind was training, sports, martial arts, those sorts of things. So that was something that was true when I was young. It was something that, very soon after arriving in Australia, I started doing. I stopped it by the time I was going off to uni. But the returning to that sort of training was, I guess, one of the unintended consequences, or perhaps it was an intended consequence. Who knows? Of of that situation, because I was holding a lot of frustration, and and that was the thing that encouraged me to go back to martial arts training, just to burn off the energy, so to speak. Um, the other part of it is, I guess, more spiritual, religious, and I
Mm,
guess, as I mentioned earlier, my family was quite heavily Catholic, but going into school and going through high school and at an all boys Catholic school, I lost that connection with religion. I found it more and more difficult to
mm,
accept the religion. But since that time, I guess what I've found is more spirituality. I've sort of found a different way to look at the world, and that's when things get difficult now. That tends to be the lens that I look at it. I try and consider the situation from the point of view of, if and I guess probably difficult to sort of summarize quickly, but if you look at it from a quantum physics point of view, you look at the atom as
yeah.
nothing but energy thingness, right? So I can't help but think that perhaps we're all one. If we're nothing but energy, you know, we're all one, right? That we're all made of the same stuff. So I try and look at the world from the other point of view, that maybe we're all just an infinitely small manifestation of something much larger. And from that standpoint, even if someone does something horrendous, I look at it from the point of view of, okay, maybe someone at some spiritual level has made a decision to do something nasty so that I have the opportunity to choose.
Mm.
But
It's
for someone behaving in that way and doing those things, I would not have the opportunity to otherwise choose how I want to be.
yeah, I
And
that's
so
a
I flip.
yeah, that's a really healthy way of looking at it. I used a similar analogy using money. Forgive me for butchering this. I can't remember it off the bat, but it's someone saying like, imagine if you had $86,000 or something, because and somebody took $60. How upset would you be? And the whole thing is that I can't remember the exact number, but there's like 86,000 seconds in the day. So if somebody ruins 60 seconds for you, do you let that ruin the rest of the good that you've got left? Which is what sort of similar to what you're saying there, where it's like, yeah, something's bad happens, but now you've got your opportunity to be the good in that moment. There's an opportunity that's
I,
been given to you to be angry, flare up, have yell or be upset about it, or you can sit back and go, no, I need to handle this in the right way. Which I think that's really emotionally mature. Which obviously, with you've got more life experience than me, so you're nailing it. I aspire to follow, but yeah, you're being mature about it, and then you're also just being, you're sort of healing yourself in the moment. I feel, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase.
I think you're you're onto it, right? And I think sometimes when you're in these difficult situations, it's very easy to sort of go back and ruminate.
Mm,
Oh, I should have done this. I should have said that. And that's you're doing nothing other than torturing yourself. But what I find helps me is I try and use this with every situation. I ask myself, what is my highest possible good in this moment?
mm,
And so that's the standard that I set. I can't predict what's going to happen in 2 minutes' time or in 20 years, And so when I'm confronted in something, that internal monologue, that prayer that I say, however you want to conceptualize it, it's what is my highest possible good in this moment,
mm,
and I'll let that be the guide for the actions that I take. And then, does that mean that my actions are perfect? No, I get it wrong, I get it right. But provided that on average I'm more good than not, I can sleep. I can put my head on the pillow and I can sleep at night. And I think that's something that I think is important. It's very easy to sort of torture yourself with the what ifs, and it's the best possible decision you can make at that moment. I think is the right one. And if you can sort of get to that point where you can sort of hold off, hold the urge to sort of bite back and sort of,
mm.
all you need 7 seconds. The 7 second pause in your mind, deep breath. Right, what's the best possible angle here, and then work through it.
And would you say that's your big sort of coping? I need to find a better word for it. Coping mechanism sounds weird, but it is a coping mechanism, I suppose. Would you say that that's probably your biggest coping mechanism when it comes to the stresses of day to day life now?
Yeah, look, I'd say so. I think that's a big part of it. I think one that's become uh, increasingly an important part of it is actually having time to be vulnerable, right? And to have conversations, genuine conversations, and make genuine connections with people. It's so easy to be transactional in this world. But one thing that is increasingly obvious to me is that there's not enough love in the interactions in the world around us. And I think if we shared a bit of love, if we made ourselves vulnerable and we made ourselves available, I think the world improves, right? And there's a particular prayer that I came across, and it really resonated for me. It's the prayer of Saint Francis, and the general message in the prayer is give to receive. Don't ask for something. Give
Mm,
the something that you're looking to receive. So don't ask for forgiveness. Forgive where the opportunity presents. Don't ask for love. Give love.
yeah.
So it's that kind of mentality that I guess I try and hold on to. So when things are prickly, I look for an opportunity to give. I'll look for an opportunity to give it the best. But that's why when I found out about this call, my initial answer was yes, and then the how am I going to do this? You know, I've anguished over that for the last couple of days, but I had confidence that I would somehow find the words that needed to be said.
No, and it goes back to what you were saying about like finding that moment to be emotionally vulnerable. If there's one thing that hopefully people can take out of these podcasts and Movember and everything is that it's not weak to speak. Talking about these things is a way that we can learn more about each other, understand what we've all been going through, because it's not, no one's alone in this stuff. We all suffer, but you're not alone in it, and it's okay to speak. Like I've spoken to two friends, and now I'm speaking to one of my dad's colleagues. Never in my 3 years doing Movember, growing stupid mustaches, did I think that we'd have this conversation. Yet here we are, talking for the betterment of men's mental health, which I think is a beautiful thing.
I think it's great, and I think this at the core of the spirit of Movember, and I think that you know the relationship that men have with each other and with the rest of the world is something that's under review, so to speak, and
Mm.
and so it should be, right. It's something that we need to put energy into so that we can be the best that we can be. The world's not an easy place at the moment, but we can do something about it, right?
Yeah, and if we're there for each other, we can make it easier for one another. Um, when with your side of opening up when it comes to actually speaking about and giving yourself that time to be vulnerable, who are you turning to spiritually? Or sorry, you mentioned spiritually. Is it mostly a spiritual thing that you turn to, or you turn to people as well?
Look, I do turn to people. I've got a wonderful support network, and I guess um, there isn't a single person that I turn to. I know who has strengths in what, and I kind of lean on some of those. So obviously my wife is someone that I speak to. My parents, they're probably my core counsel. I've got probably two friends that I'm particularly close with that I'll sort of share things with. But the interesting thing to your question is actually that the more that I've been vulnerable with people that I've worked with or that I've volunteered at school council with or wherever in my life, believe it or not, a lot actually comes straight back from those very people. So um, you would be surprised, like even a conversation like this in a way is cathartic and therapeutic
Mm.
in its own way. So um, I think that the biggest misconception I probably had around structured religion is that it kind of has this idea that you need to look external for the God that's external that kind of carries you to wherever. And I think the biggest shift I had in my thinking was that when I started to realize that, well, what if God's within? What if God's within you and within the person next to you and every other person on the street? Within me, within loved ones, within nature, is all around.
Mm.
And all I need to do is be vulnerable to tap into that love. And that's been my experience, is that as I've shown myself to be vulnerable, I've learned things from people that I didn't expect to learn, and I've formed relationships with people that I otherwise wouldn't have expected to have formed relationships with. It's more about getting over that initial you know hurdle, but I think the it's about I've found it's actually more about matching the person's level of enthusiasm. If I go to someone and they're sort of sitting here at a level 2 of enthusiasm, and I hit them with a level 20, that's not going to work, right? I'll spook them. It'll go pear shaped. They'll go sideways real quickly. But if I meet them at a 2, that's like peak goodness right there. That's the highest possible good in that situation.
Mm.
Maybe over time I can push it into 3. But it doesn't matter what I want to push it into. The way I see it, it's if they're comfortable one day lifting it into a 3, I'll go toe to toe with them. But
Mm.
if I push it, that's where I kind of see the resistance in it, and it's sort of going backwards.
Yeah, like if you're trying to
Does
support
that kind of make
someone.
sense?
Yeah, let me know if this is the way you're thinking of it. I'm thinking of it this way in my head. Is that like if you're trying to support someone or try and have a conversation with them, you got to meet them where they are. Like if you see someone crying and then you go, "Hey, how you doing?" It's like you're never gonna sort of mesh on that. But if you go up and "Hey, how you doing, man? I just want to let you know I'm here for you if you need to talk," then you're more likely to get that cohesion and talk and actually have a conversation and build a relationship.
But it's even more than that. It might be, you know, hey, Josh, I'm really frustrated today. I've had this and that go wrong, and I'm thinking of doing this and that. What do you reckon? Does that make sense to you?
Mm.
And so that kind of disarms when you sort of, and so if I talk a bit about what's going on in my world with you, you're more likely to share with me. But if I turn around, hey Josh, whenever you want to talk, give me a call. I got your back.
No,
I
I
haven't
agree
put
with that.
anything on the,
Yeah, that I
you know what I
think
mean? I've got,
it's a really, like you said, it's a disarming way to go about it, because if you, by putting your stuff on the, metaphorically speaking, you're putting your stuff on the table first. It's sort of, it's, I mean, it's both invitations. If I'm to say, "Hey, just give me a call if you need a chat, like I'm here for you," versus like that's sort of a handout. If like imagine, all right, the way I'm thinking of this, someone's on the floor, like they're crying. If you're going, "Hey, I need to talk. If you need to talk, I'm here." It's sort of like you're still standing up and you're just reaching a hand down to them. But if you're going, "Hey, man, like this stuff's really pissed me off today. Um, this happened. What do you think about it, man?" It's sort of like you're sitting down next to them and you're just both sitting there and you're just able to just be in that space together. That's the way I'm thinking of it in my head visually.
look, that's exactly right. And I guess that line of thinking, when I would have been 8 or 9 years old, something like that. And my grandmother was a piano teacher, and I don't remember what the story was, but somehow she, either one of her students or one of her doctors, someone sort of got in touch with her and said, "Hey, you know, my kids are going to Australia, and they knew that my parents were already living here. Is it okay if I put them in contact with your daughter when they get over there?" And it was a brother and sister. He was a cardiologist, she was a vet. And when they came, they came over. I remember her playing with my dog in the backyard, and he was commenting that they're commenting the suicide. Why is the suicide rate so high in Australia or in the West compared with places like Brazil? And the commentary went along the lines of, it's because there's you're constantly confronted with negative, difficult situations in a place like Brazil. You've got this constant reminder that, hey, you might have it bad, but at least you're not that bloke under the bridge. And if you are that bloke under the bridge, there's someone that's more miserable,
Hmm.
or the criminality is out of control. So you got this constant reminder that you got to be on edge. Whereas here, everyone's more or less got the same kind of standard, the same kind of situation. So you kind of lose sight of the challenges and the difficulties in the extremities that you might otherwise be exposed to.
Hmm. That's
And
it.
that kind of stuck with me. Because if you're not kind of thinking about it, or so if you think that everyone's kind of leading this idealized reality, then it's very easy for you to sort of think it's all you because you're not seeing it. And
Yeah,
that's where the
no,
vulnerability comes in. Because particularly in a place like Australia, if you're not vulnerable, well, where's the contrast come from? Where's the conversation? Where's the reminder that, hey, we've all got our stuff going on?
it's yeah, it's interesting because it's like from the Brazil side of it, it sounds like where normally the like statement is like comparison is the killer of joy and it's the killer of happiness and all that, but it's almost like the comparison side of it for Brazil sort of keeps you grounded in going, yes, it's bad, but it could be worse. Where with the mindset in like Western settings, like in Australia, it's like we're all the same. So now if I'm comparing myself to Vic, well, Vic is showing a smile, but every time I close the door, I want to cry and curl up in a ball. So now because I'm comparing us both and we're both at that level, and it's not that one of us is worse, now I know that I'm thinking I'm worse. And then it takes a conversation like this or a conversation about mental health to actually go, well, yeah, we might all look like we're having the same lives. We all go to work. We all have jobs. We all make money. But behind closed doors, I'm dealing with this, this, this. It's interesting. It was an interesting dynamic change.
Oh, look, it really is. And even in the case of that brother and sister, it was only a short time later she was killed. She was killed in the garage by someone trying to steal her car. So I kind of had these moments throughout growing up where you kind of reminded,
Mm.
that things aren't, aren't easy. That, life's not something to be taken for granted. My grandmother, my aunties, wasn't uncommon to hear that, something had happened, there was, someone was mugged or assaulted or had some other difficulty. So it was kind of, I'm not saying that was happening every week, but, it was kind of, it would pop up from time to time. You'd have these reminders that this happened to that person or this happened over there. It was kind of in the background, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah. It it's interesting that you say that the whole sort of like you get given a reminder, like almost like the universe saying, "Hey, look, there are actually bad things. Like you do have to look after yourself. You have to make sure you're not taking life for granted." Which for the younger side of it, like we see for people of my generation and younger, I feel like we see all the bad shit. Like as soon as we open up our phone, like when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I woke up that morning, I opened my phone, and the first thing I saw was the video. And it goes, and it's like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
this bad thing happened. And then you're starting to do that comparison thing, and you're starting to go, okay, well, it could be worse. Like, I could be assassinated. And then you're starting to think of that other stuff, like, okay, well, life can be taken away that easily. I do need to actually not take this for granted. I should be grateful about every day. I should look for the good things in life, that sort of thing.
Yeah, look, I don't envy the younger generations having, growing up in this, in with this heavy bombardment of media and social media and technology. I kind of feel in many ways I had a good balance between, you know, riding bikes, scraping knees, climbing trees, doing all those sorts of bits and pieces, and the technology was far from stable or steady. There was a lot of time sweating and suffering, trying to make the technology work.
Mm,
But I think what I realize now is that all of those things, all that, and I got rid of all my social media, all that stuff during COVID because I realized all that does is rob my now. It just
mm,
robs the time that I have right now. And when I was doom scrolling and looking at all those things, it's very curious, very easy to sort of get sucked into rabbit holes and this and that and what if this and what if that, and all of that is robbing the only thing that is real, and it's my now moment. because the
Mm.
stuff behind me, that's not real anymore. That stuff that happened, but it's not my reality today. It might have influenced my reality today, but that's gone. That's not here. And the future hasn't happened. So
Mm.
sitting here worrying about that, that's also robbing my attention. It's robbing my opportunity to do something of a higher order, doing something good right now. And I think that's the incredible challenge that faces this generation. That your now moment is constantly being fought over, by the Netflixes that want you to be awake all night watching the odd, you know, series, the social media platforms that just want you scrolling and clicking and whatnot, and worse. All of that stuff is just robbing your opportunity to do something right now, something that's real right now.
Mm. It's yeah, looking at it from again my younger point of view, it's like that's a really healthy way to think about it because it does rub you now, and mental health is suffering a lot in the shadow of all this social media stuff because we've got comparison, we've got all this viewing bad things that are happening all over the world. You're seeing other people doing stuff and you're going, why isn't that me? Or because these algorithms are trying to build what you're interested in. If you're feeling in a shit mood, you're just building this algorithm that's just all sad, depressing things, and it just doesn't help you. Like it's a cancer almost. It doesn't benefit you in any way.
It absolutely is. And the thing is, like, you don't realize it. You're in the prime of your life, right? Physically, all of those things. Like, you have, the world's your oyster. You can explore, you can experiment, you can try things. You know, Generally speaking, in your youth, the world is tolerant to errors and learning and discovery and those sorts of things. But if you're wasting it, on platforms, on things that are robbing your distraction, robbing your attention, at some point, you know, you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, then what? What's your contribution? What's the legacy? If that's the point in time where you then decide that you're going to self-explore, that makes things incredibly difficult at that point in your life. Like,
Mm.
while you're young, your body has an amazing ability to rebuild itself. You can play your sports, not worry too much about injury because you recover quickly. You can travel, you can study. It's easier to learn complicated things when you're younger. As you get older, you find those things get a bit harder you know, to process. But that's like, you don't realize until you're looking with the benefit of hindsight of how good that period was for those sorts of things, you know?
Mm. I'm gonna move the conversation a bit back towards the you now. So, for our listeners, one of the
Yep.
Vic and I had a call with my dad. Like I said in the intro, Vic has worked with my dad. I believe you guys, or you've recently departed from the company that my dad works at. But one of the big things that Vic had talked about on the brief phone call we had in order to set this up was talking about how he approaches mental health in the workplace now. Especially my dad
Mm.
works ridiculous hours. Like it's not foreign for me to wake up at 6 or 5 and the office lights are already on, and it's not foreign for me to be sitting at my computer about to go to bed at 1 a.m. and the office lights still on. Very demanding industry, stupid industry. Like, learn how to manage
Yep.
a timeline, managers. But anyway, for you, Vic, how you're obviously coming from the same industry, super stressful in the civil engineering department, super like hardcore, always on the move. How do you manage your mental health, and how do you look out for the people around you?
Yeah. Well, look, I might answer that by I guess pointing some of the things that were more difficult that I sort of came across earlier in my career, and then I'll sort of come back and answer your question. I
Yeah,
guess
of course, go for it.
very soon I started working, I guess I started to be exposed to workplace injuries, and the first one was a construction worker. He lost his leg. His leg was crushed when some piling equipment fell on top of him, and that was a big kick, right? Because I realized that guy was, maybe 28 years old or something like that, and he's lost his leg,
Mm.
and he had kids. What kind of life's this person going to have? And sometime later, come across someone that, lost his finger on a construction site.
So
And
just
then
to
you start to,
sorry, just to
yep.
clarify briefly on my end. So what was your occupation at this time versus what it is now? Just to clarify in my head and for the listeners at home.
Site engineer, a project engineer, so quite a junior engineer.
And then
And right now, I
mostly
have a project.
you were mostly on site when you were in your younger years. Okay, okay, yeah, I'm following now. So younger years, you're the projects.
Yeah,
Sorry, can you
yeah.
say that one more
Younger
time?
years,
You cut
more
out.
out on. Sorry, younger years, I was more out on site in various project engineer type roles, site engineer type roles.
Yep.
Then, as I've matured, I've taken on more management and leadership roles as a project manager and project director. So that's been my progression.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So sorry, I should have probably
No,
explained
that's
that.
okay. I think we're all on the same page now. So yeah, seeing a lot of workplace injuries in those junior years, being a site manager and all that.
Yeah, site engineer. Yes.
Sorry.
So those sorts of so those initial sort of injuries sort of aroused my attention in terms of what does life mean for those people. The one that really first rattled me was a senior project engineer that I had been working with, and I worked with him for maybe the first year and a half of my since I graduated, and he was a real softly spoken chap and really competent. He's the kind of guy that young engineers would aspire to. I was like, geez, I want to be like him. You know, really knowledgeable. Spoke with authority. Didn't overstep the mark. Had a family. Played cricket at his local cricket club. And I found out maybe a year or two after I worked with him that he'd gotten up out of his desk on while he was out on site, walked out and sat down on a train track.
Wow.
And no one, all of us that knew him, no one saw it coming. No one could understand it. And I think back to that person. I think back to that time, and I wonder if anyone said thank you for the things that he was doing. I wonder whether he was recognized, whether he knew he was recognized, whether he knew he was valued for the
Mm.
work that he was doing, and whether that would have made a difference. Because at that time, people weren't, you weren't really openly, you know, celebrated. It was kind of, that's the job, just get on with it. Rip, tear, bust, it needs to be done. Hurry up. Why isn't it finished? And that I kind of wonder, did he know he was valued? Did he know how widely he was valued?
Mm.
And would it have made a difference if if he was? I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, that's
I don't know where.
it. That's one of my big things these days as well when it comes to it. Because I remember when I was going through my stuff, I knew I was valued to an extent, but when you're in that pit, you don't feel valued at all. So having people say to you like, "Oh man, I'm so glad to have you as a friend," or like, "Oh, you're such a good coworker" and stuff. I mean, it still happens today. Like if I'm just having a shit day, like a Monday-itis, for example, or whatever, and it's just a coworker going, "Yo, Josh, thanks for doing all that work." It's like, oh, oh, shucks, I'm blushing now. Thank you so much. But yeah, that like I wonder that stuff a lot as well. So I've tried to implement that sort of mindset with how I interact with people today, going, "Thank you for your work" and all that.
Yeah, I think, and that's something that carries through. I'd like to think enough today. You know, you can ask your dad whether I get it right or not, but that's something that I try and do, and I don't try and overdo it. I want to make sure that it's genuine, and when I say it, they know it's genuine. They know it's heartfelt. They know that you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Because I think there's if you realize it, or your gratitude, if you're expressing gratitude for the wrong moment, I think it can backfire
yeah,
as well.
I'm at my role at the pool, so working two jobs, one at a lab in the near my university, and now at the pool as well. The pool, I've been working there 4 years, and last year before, I had moved up to a more not manager but managerial sort of role, and we had a leadership day, and one of the managers goes, "Well, like, do we ever say thanks to the guys for their work?" And I realized, like, I never do, because I sort of had that similar mindset where it was, "Ah, you're just doing the job." Like, I've gotten promoted to this managerial job because I just do the job and I do the job well. But then I started going, like, I'd see someone do something really well and they'd hop out of the pool. I'd go, "Yo, dude, the way you managed that kid was being a turd and you managed that so well." And then they look at me weird. They're like, "The fuck? That Josh just said something nice to me. Like, he just gave a compliment. He never does that." And I'm like, "Oh, like, it's not that I was bad beforehand because it was just oh, Josh never does that, but I'm pretty sure he appreciates my work." But then just hearing the appreciation thing, and then it was the same vice versa. Everybody sort of started going like, "Oh, you do this really well," and then someone goes, "Josh, I love it when you're shift lead because the parents are all good. We all get the payments done and stuff." I'm like, "Oh man, I really feel appreciated right now." It just makes it's a positive thing. Positive thing. I think it's something that everybody should try and implement.
And look, it really is. But I think one thing that you could try, and it's one thing that I do from time to time, is a moment for gratitude, right? And so it's one thing if you, the manager, you're calling someone out, well done, Lisa, you did an awesome job, that was great, da 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 da. But if you can create the space for people in your team to express gratitude to others in your team, that changes the game.
How does that look in your
You know,
workspace?
in my workspace, it's exactly that. I might kick it off and I just go, "Hey, we're going to do a moment of gratitude here before this meeting starts. I want to call out, John over here. John's done this and that, and I'm genuinely grateful for the effort. Does anyone else have a moment of gratitude they'd like to share?" And
Mm.
there's usually a bit of an awkward silence. And it's not uncommon that you get two or three pipe up and they call it out, but you kind of need someone to sort of open up the conversation, or if they don't know me and they don't know my style, I might sort of before the meeting go, "Hey Josh, this thing that you had such and such helping you with, and they're really good at dealing with that angry parent. I'm going to do a moment of gratitude in this meeting. I think that's something that would be really great for the team to um, hear you express your gratitude for that person." So there's a little bit of that as well,
Mm.
but you only need to do that a couple of times for people to have the license to
Yeah,
do it. And then once the space is created, people do it for themselves. And that's my preference, is to create an environment where people take it and run with it, and they do their own thing, you know?
I
They make it their own. So
I have a very resting bitch face, for lack of a better phrase, but like I've got a very big smile on the inside because it's kind of getting to like the title of this podcast as being man enough to speak. You're saying someone pushing it forward. It's like these moments of like a moment of gratitude, being the first guy that goes, "Hey, Vic, really appreciate what you're doing. I just want to have a moment of gratitude for you." You are man enough to speak in the meeting and go boom. And then you've inspired maybe one or two other people. And then before you know it, you've broken that stigma and now people are doing it, which works for like we're using the moment of gratitude here, but that can be the same thing for actually talking about mental health. Like we're talking about mental health. The people that we've had on the podcast so far talking about mental health, being man enough to speak, breaking stigmas, and then actually being a positive influence on those around you. I love it. I love it.
Yep.
I've got a big smile right now.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad to hear. You know, 'cause that's what I love, right? You know, like we got to be quite good at having these sorts of conversations around safety and sharing what we know. But the level up, when it comes to cultural change in an organization requires you to build trust.
Mm.
You're not going to build trust unless you're vulnerable, unless you're walking your talk. You know, yeah, it's but yeah, I think that the most important thing is that you've got to do it in a way that gives people room to put their fingerprint on it. So
Yeah.
there's and what I mean is there's no two projects, there's no two teams that I've worked on where I've done exactly the same thing. I always change it to suit the individuals that are in the in that environment.
Which
They've got
goes
to
back to
own it.
what
If
you're
they don't
saying.
own it,
Yeah, it goes back to what you were
yep,
saying about meeting
yep,
them where they are, like the level 2 versus the level 20 or that sort of thing. With your teams, it's the same sort of thing. Your team might be running at a collective level
exactly the same.
4. Yeah, I love it. So,
Yep, yep.
one of the
That's
things
exactly right.
one of the things we talked about as well on the call in preparation for this podcast was just how you do check in on people. I thought it was very sweet. My dad made a bit of a joke about it, which I know that's just his way of showing love. He does it the same way I do, make fun of people. It means he loves you. But one of the things dad mentioned was that I think it was, again, forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, post project or near the end of the year or something, you actually sent out like individual emails to people saying that, like appreciation and stuff. Do you mind speaking a bit on that?
Yeah. So look, sometimes I do it via email. Sometimes I'll pick up the phone. But I think it's important to make time to speak to people one on one. I think if you don't create the space to have that conversation, I don't think they feel the gratitude. And the project that I worked on with your dad was particularly tough.
Mm.
The project was difficult, but the circumstances that we had to deliver it was right in the middle of the COVID years. There were things that we were doing and we were being asked to do that we had just not done before, and we had not worked remotely in the way that we were pushing our systems to do. Everything about the ask, the time frames, the work, the endless change was was difficult. And it was a big team. We had to coordinate an incredibly large group of people. And I guess one thing that I'm going to rewind a bit for context, but very early on when I took on that project, I got pulled aside and I got told that someone had had a serious attempt on their life. I did not know who.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, is this a junior person? Is this a senior person? Is this someone on the periphery of the team, or is this someone front and center on the team? And it was not acceptable for me to allow the culture, the environment of that team to not be one that was supported, particularly given how difficult and crazy the world was. There had to be a way that to activate everyone to look out for everyone else, because there's no way I could do it all on my own. The team was too big, spread across too many locations. I had to find a way to activate the team, and people like your dad did that for their teams, and it cascaded through the through the organization. But for me to do for them to do that, I had to do it for them. Does that kind of make sense? And so I was asking them to do an incredibly difficult job, and engineers aren't known for their people skills. Like, we're
Yeah.
probably the to
Uh,
be front and center, but that's actually often the run amongst engineers, particularly those in the project management space, is that we should qualify for some sort of honorary psychology degree, because most of what we do is deal with people problems, right?
mm,
But so it wasn't that I had to, or that it was pure, genuine gratitude that I was going to these people, not because it was engineered to cascade. It took 18 months to kind of get everyone sort of moving in this kind of way. And once it started to sort of come to life, it was a whole bunch of little corrections and working with people and showing them that they can. And people like your dad took it on as a badge, and they passed it on. So when I'm contacting people like your dad, and I'm talking to them, or I'm emailing, that's pure, heartfelt, sincere gratitude, because that was not something that any one of us could have done, in our own right.
mm,
And I think for most of us, when that project finished, there was a kind of grief in terms of the project coming to an end, but a grief that we weren't going to be working together. And it was a team made up of people from many different companies, many different organizations. It could not have been a more diverse group, but everyone banded together, and there was genuine love in the interactions, and everyone was doing everything that they could to make this thing work. And so it was genuine gratitude. It was the genuine feeling of love, pride, and admiration that sort of prompted things like those emails, individually, that prompted the phone calls, you know. And like I think your dad even commented that we would go off on you know down different rabbit tracks, talking about all sorts of things. You spend enough time working with people, you form genuine friendships with them. Like
yeah.
a project like that is 10% of your average, career. You know, it's it's a significant period of time that you're spending, and you're right. We often spend more time on these big jobs with each other than we do with our own families. It's incredibly difficult. I don't think most people understand the incredible sacrifice and difficulty that comes from building one of these jobs.
Mm,
Be it designer, be it constructor, people are putting their heart and souls into these jobs, and I think that's the bit um, that sometimes is lost. And that's where the space for the gratitude and the space for that admiration and love sort of comes in. It's that people like your dad are incredible engineers, and so, like, I can't do the work that your dad does, and I admire him for the work that he does, and I admire others like him for the work that they do and their ability to synthesize all this information and piece the job together. So I kind of feel a um a responsibility to do what I can for the people around me, and that's a kind of burden that I put on myself. I want to make sure that I'm enabling people to be at their best, that the situation is possible. And things go wrong and things get difficult. But if we can do it with a smile on our face and a laugh, then I choose that path every day of the week.
That's that's really powerful, man. Like it you said it wasn't something what were the words you used? You said it wasn't something that you needed to do, but like it's something you wanted to do, and it's almost in with the person you are. It was something that, based on your morals and who you are as a person, you had to do, and that's so commendable, man. I respect that so much, because, like you said, 18 months to get the whole team, the whole project group in on it to sort of actually look out for one another, and that started with you, man. Like, not many people have the cojones to just push on and make sure that we're all looking after one another, which is super commendable, and I respect it so much. It's really powerful. I'm saying a lot of
It's
words, but I'm
an effort.
speechless.
I can't take the credit for it because everyone had to sort of join in. That's
Mm,
the beauty of this. There's a force multiplier. And so when everyone starts to put their bit in, it's not about me. It forms a life of its own, right? It carries its own energy, and so
it's exponential. Yeah.
um, it's exponential. It grows in ways that you, and this is why I come back to that point. What's your highest possible good, right? Because I look back on that job, and I know that everyone acted with that idea of their highest possible with their highest possible contribution at every interaction. And were there problems? Yeah, there were problems. Sometimes there's some things that we needed to work through. But we put structures in place to support each other. But it was the team took it and they ran with it. And because they took it and they ran with it, it force multiplied. And that was the thing that was absolutely beautiful in that situation. It was just when the team saw that they could and that there was space for it, they did. And it was it was something else.
Mm. And then through, obviously, that was COVID era, 2020, 2021, 2022 for us that had lockdown for many years. And I assume you've been bringing that sort of energy. I mean, of course you would, but of you bringing that sort of energy to every project that you've been a part of now.
Yeah. So I continue to do that, but like I said at the start, it's different with every individual. I make it work for the environment that I'm in, and the team that I most recently had the privilege of sharing time with. They were scattered geographically, and in time zones, and in ways that I wasn't challenged with the previous team.
Mm.
So that one was in some ways more difficult because some of them I never had the opportunity to meet in person. The project sizes were completely different, which also brings a challenge because when you're doing high volumes of lower value projects, it's much more difficult to unify and to centralize people on a common objective. But you just have to find ways. You have to find that common ground, and you have to be open to pivoting and changing your approach to maximize that situation. And again, the fundamental is being vulnerable, being open, and engaging the other people that you work with. Listen to them, understand what's working, what's not. I think the worst thing that you can do is sort of, you know, kick through the door and go, I think you need X, Y, and Z, and get onto it. Maybe you do need X, Y, and Z, but you're not going to um, inspire the group to get to that outcome, if that's your approach.
Mm. So when you've been saying that, even though there were tough times, for the most part, you guys were looking out for yourselves. What sort of things did you guys have in place for when you were struggling?
Yeah. So look, to be honest, it would often come back to me, and the bit that I struggled with in that period was that there are a lot of people in a lot of hardship, a lot of difficult circumstances. There were people working on bedside tables. There were people, being kicked out of homes. There were people with, you name it, it was happening on the
Mm.
on the project, right? And initially, through the first couple of years of the project, I would feel extremely drained at the end of the day, because I would put all of my heart and soul, my life, if you will,
Mm.
into every single situation. I'd get back inside the house depleted. I got nothing left.
Yeah.
The all the juices out of the tank. And a friend of mine made the suggestion that instead of me shining my light to try and illuminate things for someone, that I pray to be a conduit for God's light, if you will.
Mm.
I don't know if that sort of makes sense, but when I sort of changed my mindset towards, instead of me trying to share my light, but I'm rather a vehicle to pass through something that's much bigger and much brighter than I am, that kind of changed the game for me. And I can't explain it. And that's probably one of those things that's um, difficult for an engineer, that a lot of these things don't fit the standard calculus or Newtonian view of the world. But it was a game changer for me, to use that prayer and ask, to be a conduit for something bigger than me. And I can't explain it in any other way, that never felt that's let me down. I've always felt that I've been able to give as much as I could into a particular situation. But yeah, I'm not sure if that makes sense.
No,
What I'm
that for
trying to
me
explain.
that makes perfect sense. I've been praying for similar things recently, to as you said, be a conduit, be like a vessel for something more powerful, to like use me to be put out to the world. That I've faced similar things myself initially, like in high school. High school, everyone was suffering for me. Like I was in my own pit, my friends were in their own pits, and then my friends' friends were in there, and it just seemed like everybody was miserable. And if you try, and this is me getting into my spirituality side of it, if you try and do it by yourself, you get drained really quickly. But for me, at least, doing it with God, it makes everything so much easier. If God's got my back and He's using me to help push it out.
It absolutely changes the game. It's and actually, you'd be surprised how happy it makes me to hear that, because that's something that if you're talking about challenges and hardships, I think the one that kind doesn't get me often, but if something is going to get me, it's it's this loneliness, right?
Mm.
In that not everyone that you can speak to, or that you speak to, understands. Even those that are more um, religious or spiritual, not everyone kind of sees the universe in the same way. And so the thing that, if something's going to sort of get me at some point, it's that that kind of loneliness that that I'm not understood. But I kind of, when I catch myself kind of going down those paths, I kind of realize that's an ego thing.
Mm.
That I want to be on. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, what's as much as I want to be understood, does
It
it
doesn't,
really matter? It doesn't matter to
doesn't
me.
really. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's that's not the important thing. So that's the other sort of dialogue that I sort of catch myself with is this an ego thing? Is it motivated by something that's not real or not genuine? Is it motivated by fear? That that's kind of the internal checklist when I sort of catch myself sort of straying a bit. You
Mm.
know, what, what's at the core of it, and then that becomes the basis for the self correction.
Yeah. Um. When you're saying self correction, in what's a sort of example, if you could, for when you're sort of catching yourself going down this one path, and then you're sort of feeling that ego, maybe that bit of loneliness or misunderstood. What are you recognizing and then pulling out for that? Because I experience a similar sort of thing, especially when it comes to the religion side of it. That it's I might go down a path that mentions a bit more heavily on the religion side, and then I realize that I'm not that I'm trying to preach. I'm not trying to do a sales pitch, but it's sort of preaching to the wrong choir, if that makes sense. What are your experiences with that, and sort of how do you manage it, sort of shifting it? Because again, as I know this, I'm making this question very long winded, but when you talk about things from a spirituality point of view, while the words being used, especially in my experiences, again, can be religious, the main essence of it is still that I love you and I want you to be good. Like I want you to look after yourself. I want to make sure you're okay. But I don't know if that question made too much sense, but if you can.
It does. I guess I'll sort of approach it in two ways. I guess um, the first one is when I catch myself frustrated that someone just can't see it. That they don't get it.
Mm,
They're doing it wrong. Like it's clear as day. It should be this.
yeah.
And so in those sorts of situations, I kind of had you know like a savior type thing. I kind of felt duty bound
Yeah. Savior complex
to
for it. Yeah.
awake, and that's a mistake, right? And what helped me deal with that angle was the and it comes back to something I touched on earlier in the call, was that what if someone's reason for being here is exactly that experience? They've they've opted to have that experience, to do those things, so that I'm given the opportunity of choice.
Mm,
And by me pushing and thrusting my views on them doesn't actually serve them, because they're actually here to do something else. I can offer and I can meet them where it's at. But if I'm pushing something and they're not willing to accept, or they don't want to accept, all that's going to do, it's like two magnets repelling each other.
mm,
They're just gonna I'm just gonna keep nudging it along. It's actually gonna make the situation worse.
yeah.
So that I think that's yeah, that's probably the main realization I had, is that the more I kind of try and push something, the more it kind of jumps away, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah. And then the next question to that being, what well, because obviously you still want to help and you still want to make sure that they're okay and all that. What's your switch up in tactics at that point?
I don't think I have a, a predetermined
Yeah, it probably
approach. I
falls
guess
back
the
more
moment
to the person, doesn't it?
does. Like I guess when I detect, I make myself available,
Mm.
and then I kind of see where it goes. But if I'm not available, then it doesn't. Then there's no room for something to happen from that, you know. And so like I've got someone close to me who's right in the thick of really struggling with their situation, and I try to help and I try and encourage. Uh, I make myself available, but he's not interested in engaging. And no matter what I do, what I say, um, where I am, that 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 person is not prepared to put his hand out and ask for help. And
Mm.
that's at the core of the situation. And with great sadness, I see the damage that occurs around him as a result of him being unwell. He doesn't recognize the good that he's capable of bringing, because when he's good, he is great. You know, like he has so much to offer, but he doesn't believe in himself.
Mm.
And there's nothing that I can do um, that will lead him to recognize that until he decides that he wants to for himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the other bit that I kind of self is that there's someone else who's equally close to this person, and his approach could not be more the opposite of my approach. And initially, that would frustrate me because I'm like, how dare this person, you know, say this, do that, intervene in that way. But what I now realize is that actually we're giving this person the gift of choice.
Mm.
I'm offering one approach. This other person is offering a completely different approach. Both approaches are based in love. They're two completely different ways of tackling the problem. It's there, it's available. He just needs to put his hand up and accept a
Yeah.
part or his own part.
Sort of.
But the thing is that all of us around see what he doesn't see, and I think that's the dark part of of the mental health problem, is that when you're in it, you don't see what those around you are seeing, and you don't feel the extent that you impact and you influence the world around you, because you're in the state where you're so absorbed in whatever things are resonating through your own mind that you don't see the light where it is. It's, you know, I don't know, I don't know what the right words are, but I kind of,
No,
that's the impression that I have. You're blind to the love that's there.
it's such a again, going back to my own experiences with this, it's such a self-deprecating scenario to be in, because while you've got all this around you, you also feel undeserving. Like, bless my mom and dad, when I was going through it, I was nothing but a little shit, screaming, yelling, having tantrums like I wasn't almost an adult, throwing stuff, like being a massive baby. And I couldn't see that them asking about my day isn't just trying to make me upset. Looking in retrospect, why is them asking about my day making me upset? But everything that they're doing is coming from a place of love, and it eventually comes to a point where you either flip a switch in yourself, or and then you just look around and you go, what am I doing? Everyone around me is here for me. They're trying to support me. And then you realize that they've brought you to this pond to drink using the can show a horse to water but can't make it drink. It's like you're the horse that they've shown to this beautiful lake, this beautiful pond, whatever, stream, and then you've just been sitting there for ages just dwelling on, oh man, look at that muddy puddle over there. I hate mud. And then you just
Yep.
realize I've been here this whole time. These people have been trying to help me and I just didn't take it. And then you just get grateful. I feel that me coming out of the other side of the tunnel, it was a very grateful thing to go. I was such a piece of shit and you guys stood by me the entire time. That's how I look at it anyway.
But look at what you're doing now,
Oh
right?
yeah, like
So
without a
yeah,
doubt, everything that I've gone through, I wouldn't as much of pain and stuff. Looking back at it, it all seems over silly things. Like I'm like, I can't believe I got to such a low over that. But I'm grateful to have experienced it to give me the motivation and perhaps the purpose to do what I do now. Looking at men's mental health, making sure that other people do speak, and obviously there's still awful things that happen, but it's more proof that we do need to speak up about it more and use our experiences to show people that A, you can be man enough to speak, B, you aren't weak if you do speak, and C, the world is a better place with you guys in it, and if you can take those blinders off, you are loved.
yep. Amen. I don't think I could have said that better. I think what you've said is exactly what I feel, right? And someone needs to set the example. Someone needs to to be the change that they want to see in the world. And I feel very happy seeing people like you starting that so early in life, right? Because that wasn't a thing,
Mm,
when I was your age, and behind all the macho and the bravado and all those sorts of things that I saw, I experienced, that I myself portrayed. In hindsight, I see that everyone was carrying their own cross, right?
mm,
And I think the only real difference was how open we were, and like there were people that I found out about after meeting them long after we'd finished high school, and then they're revealing their challenges. You just don't know who's dealing with what. Like particular like that's something that's got to change. People just need to learn to talk and need to learn to share the love, right? It's
couldn't agree more.
it's yeah, it's as time goes by, it never ceases to amaze me how you just can't pick who's having their own battle. It just really emphasizes the importance of just being kind in your interactions day to day. You just don't know who's where and who's dealing with what. I can't control anything else other than how I react to something.
Yeah. And it is tough to be the bigger person in those scenarios if it is like you're on the other end of it. Like, again, bless my parents, man, with the amount of shit I threw at them, and I definitely got on their nerves, and then they were still able to look at me and love me and still do their best to support me. It's inspiring because that's what you want to try and attribute to everyone in everyday life. Like, even a couple of years ago, it's like I start driving and stuff. I see other people do like silly things, or I'm walking around a shopping center and I see someone do stupid stuff and I'm judgmental. But nowadays I look at it, I'm like, maybe there's something going on for you. Maybe this is your first time doing this or first time doing that. And I think it helps to take a more positive look at the world. And I said this in one of the earlier episodes, but really just looking for the small things in life, like the small things, and just finding the good. Find the good in people if you can. Um,
I think that's I think you're bang on there. If you can take that time to focus on the little things and appreciate the little things, I think that's one of those things that just game changes. The power of gratitude is incredible, but also the power of forgiveness, right?
yeah,
It's so easy to sort of hold grudges. I think or get frustrated with someone. It doesn't serve anything to hold on to that sort of resentment and that anger. Forgive, move it on, move that energy on. God bless, goodbye, thank you, and that's it.
yeah. I Forgiveness is massive. Like I was explaining to someone very dear to me how forgiveness isn't just about healing the person who's asking for forgiveness, but it heals yourself. So, like, if I use you and me as an example, like, if Vic has upset me and Vic apologizes and I say, fuck you, Vic, then neither of us heal. Vic still feels bad, I feel bad. If Vic apologizes and I go, yeah, Vic, we're all good, but in my heart, we're not good, Vic's healed, but I'm not healed. Because now every time I see Vic, I'm like, oh, Vic's the guy who I don't know, he called me a funny name. But if Vic apologizes and I forgive him and it's not forgive and forget, but it's going, I forgive what you did and I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt to show me that you are the better person that you want to be. And then from there, you're both healed and you're both able to move forward. Gratitude and forgiveness. I love it.
It's forgiveness is atonement, right? That's exactly what you're saying.
Mm,
It's that atonement is as much for you as for the other person. It's I think it's a huge part of it, and I think the the more I talk to people, the more I engage with people, the more I see that fundamentally everyone just wants to get along. Everyone just wants to enjoy this beautiful world. No one wants to. I haven't met anyone that just genuinely just wants to be angry and picking fights at people. I think fundamentally, at some level, we all want the same sorts of things, and it's just that we've just got to be constantly reminding ourselves not to sort of um, allow ourselves to be trapped into those things that sort of hold anger and hold ill will towards others.
mm, I couldn't agree more. Did you have any closing thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to give to the viewers as we finish up this podcast?
I think the main thing I'd say to everyone is that diamonds are created under pressure. Every situation, whatever you're feeling, however dark or difficult the circumstance is, look at it as that process of creating the diamond. You might not see the benefit or the growth that comes from that situation, that moment, or the those consecutive situations, as the case may be. But at some point, you grow exactly as you have, Josh, and you bring something back for the world. And so, no matter how difficult it is, diamonds are created under pressure.
Mm.
That would be my thought.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Like, again, looking back at our past experiences, me with my own mental health battles and how I use them now, and then you with your experiences in the workplace and how you use them to make a more positive and open space for talking about mental health. It's truly amazing. And Vic, I got to give you your moment of gratitude for this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've enjoyed every minute of it, talking to you about everything. I think that you're doing a massive amount of work in the world, looking after people, looking after men's mental health. I love what you're doing. I hope you keep doing it, man. I appreciate you so much.
It goes both ways, Josh. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think this is a great initiative, and I look forward to seeing this grow. Further and further. I think you're on the right track. Keep doing what you do, and thank you for taking the time to have a chat with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vic. Have a good night, man.